I got uninvited from my own mom's birthday because, apparently, I didn't look right standing next to my sister's boyfriend. Funny thing is, that guy? He actually worked for me. I was his boss. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you still think about coming home, then don't bother calling me your father." 3 weeks later, right on my mom's birthday, their house lost power, water, and internet all at once. Stick with me for a bit, maybe you'll see a little of yourself in this story. Hey there, my name's Ethan. I'm 29 now, living in a small town about a 20-minute drive from Illinois. My mornings are pretty simple. I brew up some coffee, flip on the Weather Channel, and head to work, which is less than 10 minutes down the road. A while back, I co-founded a little tech company that specializes in sustainable energy. Nothing too flashy, but it's honest work. Honestly, most people, especially my own family, don't really get what I do. They still think I spend my days twisting wrenches and patching up machines, and honestly, that's fine by me. I've never felt the need to sit them down and explain. When someone asks about my folks, my parents, or my sister Lily, I just give a small, polite smile and say, "It's been a while since we last caught up." That's all I say. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because, after a while, retelling the same old story just feels pointless. I haven't reached out to them in over 2 years now. No calls, no texts, no holidays, no birthdays, nothing. Just a long, quiet stretch like someone cut the line between us and nobody ever tried tying it back together. There was a time when I thought family was everything. But all of that shifted 2 years ago, right around my mom's birthday. Actually, it all started about 3 weeks before her birthday. I had just booked a trip home, cleared some time off from work. The plan was simple: show up a couple days early, hang around, help set things up, just like I'd done every other year. Nothing crazy. I just wanted to let them know I'd be there. I called my mom right away, but it was my dad who picked up after 2 rings. I told him casually, "Hey, just a heads up, I'll be home 2 days early. If you need me to bring anything or help out, just say the word." At first, he gave me some vague reply, then there was this weird pause. When he spoke again, his voice sounded heavier, like he was trying to get around something uncomfortable. He said, "Ethan, maybe it's better if you don't come home this year." At the time, I figured he was just worrying about my schedule. I laughed a little and said, "It's no big deal, Dad. I've got everything handled." But then came another pause, longer this time. And when he spoke again, his voice was sharper. He said, "Lily's bringing her boyfriend home this year. He's someone important. Talks well, carries himself nicely. And your job, well, it's not exactly something we're proud to brag about. Maybe it's best if you just stay away." Right then, I felt this wave of heat crawl up the back of my neck. My heart started pounding. I clutched my coffee mug tighter without even thinking. "What the hell did you just say?" I blurted out, my voice cracking with anger. I expected him to backpedal, soften the blow, but he didn't. He said it plain as day. "You showing up would just embarrass the family." And then he hit me with the final blow. "If you still insist on coming, don't call me your father." He hung up before I could even respond. I lowered the phone slowly, feeling my hand tremble, slick with sweat. The apartment was dead silent, no TV noise, no cars outside, no footsteps, just me standing there, frozen, like I'd just been yanked out of my own life. His words kept circling in my mind, clear as a bell. "You would just embarrass the whole family. If you come, don't call me your father." For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard him. But no. Every word was as sharp and cold as a slap to the face. There was no mistake, no slip of the tongue. My jaw locked up. My throat felt tight, like I couldn't even swallow. Right then, memories started rushing back. How for years I had been the one quietly paying all their bills, electricity, water, internet, without a single word. Nobody ever thanked me. And now somehow I was the shame of the family. I picked up my phone again, my hand still a little shaky, though my mind was cooling fast. I pulled up my banking app and scrolled through the payment history. I just needed to see the numbers, how much I had spent every month without missing a single one. For over 2 years straight, $350 a month like clockwork. Electricity, water, internet. Every bill paid right on time, deducted automatically. I scrolled all the way down to the bottom. The total stared back at me, $7,245.64. I just stared at that number for a long minute. Not because I was surprised, but because something inside me went still. Not sadness. Not even anger. Just emptiness. Almost 10 grand. And now I was the shame. As I sat there staring at that endless list of payments, a quiet thought crossed my mind, a thought no one in my family had ever dared to ask in 30 years. Had Lily ever done as much for them as I had? It wasn't bitterness. I wasn't keeping score. It was just reality. If I was the standard for being the shame, what was Lily being measured against? I had poured nearly $7,300 into keeping their lights on without ever asking for a damn thing back. Did Lily ever have to sacrifice anything? Or did she just show up pretty dress, winning smile, successful boyfriend, and take a bow? I wasn't looking for a trophy. I wasn't even looking for recognition. I just realized, probably for the first time in my life, that fairness was never a factor in our family. I had been standing on the sidelines since I was a kid. In family pictures, you could usually find me tucked behind someone else, barely in the frame, not looking at the camera. Nobody told me to move, but somehow I always knew my place. Lily was always right in the center of it all: birthdays, graduations, even her breakups. The whole family would rally around her, fuss over her, celebrate her. I honestly can't remember the last time someone looked me in the eye and just asked if I was doing all right. Lily's 2 years older than me, but it was never really about age. She was the hope, the bright, promising future my parents loved to brag about whenever relatives came around. And me? If I got mentioned at all, it was as an afterthought. A small, forgettable footnote in the family's story. "Oh, Ethan? He's fine," they'd say. "I think he works in technology or something." I used to believe that if I just kept my head down, worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and handled everything quietly, eventually they'd notice me. Turns out, when you're used to being invisible, it's real easy for people not to notice when you're gone. It all really started about 2 years ago when I began paying my parents' utility bills, electric, water, internet, every month like clockwork. The first time, it was my mom who called. She sounded worried, told me how the cost of living had shot up, how the bills were higher than usual that month, and how their retirement checks just weren't stretching far enough anymore. Then, in this soft, almost embarrassed voice, she said, "If you could help us out a little, it would mean so much." Of course, I agreed. Back then, I figured it was just a temporary thing, help out for a few months till they got back on their feet. But the months rolled by and nothing changed. No one ever brought up stopping. No one ever talked about a plan. It just became the new normal. Every once in a while, I'd ask, "Hey Mom, is Lily helping out at all?" She always dodged the question. Sometimes she'd say, "Just help us this month, your sister will pitch in next time." Other times it was, "Your sister's taking care of your dad's medical expenses, that's a big burden too." I heard those lines so many times I could have said them myself. And every time I just smiled and let it slide, even though deep down I knew none of it was true. So I kept on sending the money. Almost $400 a month, every single month, without a word of complaint. It wasn't that I didn't care, I did. It was just that I believed it was the right thing to do. I used to think that if I stayed steady and responsible enough, maybe someday they'd finally see me. But now, after everything, they looked right at me and decided I was the family's shame. After the call with my dad, the whole apartment felt hollow. I just sat there, still holding my phone, frozen on the couch. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't heartbroken either. There was only one thing left sitting inside me, a quiet, firm feeling that said, "That's enough." So I opened my banking app, scrolled down to the part where I had set up those automatic payments for my parents' utilities. I went through them one by one: power, water, internet, and canceled each one. No hesitation. I didn't do it to be spiteful. I wasn't trying to get even. I did it to protect the one thing I still had left, a little bit of my own self-respect. About a week later, I got a message from my mom. She used that same soft, sweet tone she always did, like nothing had ever happened. No mention of the birthday, no apology, nothing. Just, "The internet bill is due. Could you please take care of it?" I stared at the screen for a long minute. Then I put the phone down without answering. Not because I was trying to make some kind of dramatic statement, but because after everything, the first thing they thought to say was just another request. "No, are you okay? No, can we talk? Just pay the internet bill." That silence, my silence, said more than any words could. A couple weeks later, my dad tried calling. The phone rang a few times, then stopped. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. His voice was sharp, impatient, same as always. "The power company called. Bills unpaid. What's going on?" No concern. No regret. Not a single word about what he'd said to me just weeks earlier. I listened to the message, turned the phone face down on the table, and left it there. And just like that, I stayed silent all the way through my mom's birthday. Her birthday was about 3 weeks after my dad told me not to come home. From what I heard, the party went just like they wanted. Her favorite roasted chicken, her favorite cake from the bakery, and a handful of close family members gathered around the table. Everything perfect. Except for me. I wasn't there. And that was the one part they hadn't planned for. That afternoon, around 5 p.m., I was sitting in my living room, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold a long time ago. My phone buzzed. It was my mom calling. I stared at her name on the screen for a second, then set the phone down. Didn't answer. Didn't even really think about it. A few minutes later, my dad tried calling too. Then Lily. 3 calls in under 10 minutes. I let every single one ring out. There was no curiosity, no temptation to pick up. I just leaned back in the chair, my eyes on the fogged-up window, the gray winter sky pressing in outside, cold and heavy, the way late autumn always feels when winter's right at the doorstep. About 10 minutes after the calls stopped, the text messages started rolling in. First one was from Mom. "Ethan, the power's out. The whole house is dark. Please pay the bill." I read it calmly. No anger, no shock, just that same emptiness in my chest. The one you get when you realize you've spent your life carrying people who never even noticed. Then came a message from Dad. "No water. We can't cook. Handle it now." And then Lily chimed in. "Internet's down. Guests are arriving. Please fix this. It's urgent." I glanced at the clock. It was 6:32 p.m. I remember that number clearly. Exactly 3 weeks before, almost to the minute, I had canceled every automatic payment. Right after my father told me not to call him Dad if I dared show my face. And now, right in the middle of the party they were so desperate to have without me, everything shut down. Power, water, internet, all gone when they needed it most. I didn't text back. I didn't call. I didn't feel the need to explain anything. I just sat there, turning the cold coffee cup slowly in my hands, staring through the window like I could see something beyond the gray. And in that quiet moment, I realized they weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because there was no one left to lean on. Around 7 p.m., the phone started buzzing again. Non-stop this time. But it wasn't my parents or Lily anymore. It was the relatives. The same ones who only bother to show up on holidays, but always have something to say when things go sideways. The texts came in waves. Some called me disrespectful. One even said bluntly, "You embarrassed your mother in front of the whole family." Another, a little more subtle but just as cruel, said, "Your sister was right. People like you shouldn't show up on a happy day." I read through every message that came in without replying. Not because I agreed with any of it, but because I was tired. Tired of explaining myself to people who always chose the loudest voice in the room over what was right. I was about to put my phone down when the screen lit up again. It was Aunt Megan, the only person left in the family who still trusted me. She was calling through some old video app that hardly anyone else used anymore. Just her and me, because we were the only ones who still thought it mattered to see each other face to face when it really counted. I paused a second, then answered on the second ring. The first thing I saw was her face, a little blurred by the yellow light coming from the kitchen behind her. A kitchen I knew like the back of my hand. Every crack in the walls, every squeaky cabinet door, I could picture it all. But tonight it felt different. In the background, I could hear silverware clinking, awkward laughter, and the hum of half-hearted conversations. Aunt Megan looked at me through the screen. Her eyes were warm but worried. "You're not going to pay for it, Ethan?" she said, trying to keep her tone light, like she was still figuring out exactly what had gone down. I stared back at her for a moment. When I finally spoke, my voice came out slow and heavy, like I was digging up something I'd buried a long time ago. "You know, Auntie, it was Dad. He told me not to come." I swallowed hard. "He said, if I showed up anyway, I shouldn't call him my father anymore." She didn't say anything right away. Her face changed, not angry, just sad. She glanced over her shoulder, scanning the room behind her. And that's when the call exploded into chaos. I could hear my mom's voice, loud and sharp. "Tell him I'm ashamed of him. On today of all days, how could he do this?" Dad's voice cut in, rough and dismissive. "It's not that serious. It's just a few bills. What kind of man gets petty over money?" Then another voice, I think it was my uncle, chimed in. "Poor Lily having to deal with a brother like that." Footsteps shuffled closer to the camera. Lily came into view, arms crossed tight across her chest, her mouth twisted in an irritated frown. "He even picked up the call," she said, glaring at me like I was a stranger. "Mom's been crying all day. Does he even care? Seriously, no shame at all." I didn't say a word. Just sat there, watching. Keeping quiet felt like the only way to protect myself. I was about to end the call when another face appeared in the corner of the screen. A young guy, maybe mid-20s, dressed in a dark suit, his hair neatly combed. He looked at me, confusion flickering across his face, then he gave a small, awkward smile. "Hey, boss," he said, his voice scratchy and unsure, like he didn't know if he was allowed to speak. I froze. My fingers tightened around the phone without even thinking. I hadn't expected this, not here, not tonight, the night I'd been told I was too much of a shame to be around. I stared at him for a few more seconds and then it clicked. His face, the way he spoke, I recognized him. He was one of the newer hires, a transfer from our southern branch. We'd only traded a few emails and he'd sent me a couple of reports. I had no idea he was Lily's boyfriend, the one the whole family was bending over backwards to impress. The room behind Aunt Megan seemed to freeze. I saw her glance over her shoulder just as the background noise turned into pure panic. Somebody whispered, "Wait, what did he just call Ethan?" Another voice, sounding even more confused, said, "Boss? Wait, does that mean Ethan's Lily's boyfriend's boss?" The whispers built up like a rising tide, messy and nervous. And me? I didn't move. Didn't nod. Didn't deny it. I just sat there, watching it all unfold. And right then, the young man straightened up, glanced toward the people behind the camera, and spoke clearly. "In case anyone didn't know, I work at Pacific TerraTech. Mr. Ethan is one of the company's co-founders." His voice was steady, cutting through the awkward hum of the kitchen. And just like that, the whole room fell dead silent. Not awkward. Just stunned. I still didn't say a word. I pressed my lips together and gave a small, firm nod. The young man looked back at me through the screen, wide-eyed. I leaned in a little, kept my voice even and calm, and said, "Hope your big introduction goes perfectly." Then I hung up. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No tossing, no turning, no waking up replaying old conversations in my head. I didn't feel satisfied, exactly. I just felt lighter. Because, for once, they finally saw me. And there was nothing left to argue about. The next morning, before the sun even had a chance to warm the room, I grabbed my phone like usual and started flipping through my emails. There were a few meeting reminders, a couple finance updates, and then I spotted a name I didn't recognize. Mason Reed. I opened the email. The first line hit me square in the chest. "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were Lily's brother. I've always respected you at the company." I raised an eyebrow and leaned back against the pillow, reading further. Mason went on to say how surprised he was to find out about the family connection, and then, without sugarcoating anything, he wrote, "I didn't expect her to be like that. I'll be ending this relationship. Thank you for not putting me on the spot in front of everyone." I laid the phone down on my chest, closed my eyes for a moment, and just breathed. It took me a couple of minutes to open the inbox again and type out my reply, simple, clear, without dressing it up. "Mason, that's your choice. I don't expect anyone to make decisions just to stay in my good graces. Think it through before you do anything. And for the record, I don't bring family matters into the workplace." I hit send. No second-guessing. No lingering emotions. That was enough for me. Some things, once you say them plainly, don't need anything more. Around 10 a.m., while I was finishing up a meeting with the department heads, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, saw Lily's name flashing on the screen. I stared at it for a second. Then I hit decline. Not because I was mad. Not to prove anything. Just because I had finally had enough of apologies that only showed up after everything was broken beyond fixing. 5 minutes later, a message popped up. "I'm sorry. I didn't think Mason would change like that. You're his boss. If you said something, I'm sure he'd listen. Please talk to him. Ask him to come back to me." After reading her message, I walked down the hallway and stopped at the window. I leaned into the glass and let my thoughts settle. I read the message a few more times before I finally typed my response, short, but enough for her to understand exactly what I meant. Mason didn't walk away because I told him to. He walked away because of how you treat people, how you dismiss what you don't understand, and how you always assume that speaking softly is the same thing as being kind. I hit send, slid the phone back into my pocket, and returned to my desk. Not even a full minute passed before another message came in. "I know I messed up. But this time I mean it. I'll change. Please believe me just this once." I read it slowly. I sat with it for a bit, letting the words linger. And still, nothing inside me moved. It wasn't because I didn't care anymore, it was because something finally made sense to me. The gap between two people? It's not always in the apology. Sometimes it's in when the apology comes. I gently deleted the message, didn't save it, didn't screenshot it. Just let it go. And went back to the life I was living now, the one I had built with my own hands. A week later, on a quiet Friday afternoon, I was walking in from the garage when I stopped cold on the porch. There they were, my parents, standing at the front door, each with a small suitcase in hand. They looked tired, worn down from the trip. And I didn't need to ask why they were there. You don't show up with bags like that unless you're expecting something. This wasn't a drop-by. I opened the door and let them in. No anger. No coldness. Just a quiet choice. I didn't want to have that conversation out on the porch, especially with the wind picking up the way it was. We sat in the living room. The tea I had made earlier was still warm, steam curling up from the cups. My dad spoke first. His voice was lower than usual, almost gentle. He apologized. Then my mom chimed in. Said they'd taken some time to think things through. Maybe they had gone too far. Maybe things never should have gotten this bad. I stayed quiet. I wasn't trying to interrupt or challenge them. I just wanted to hear whether this was the end of something or the start of another ask. And just like I expected, it didn't take long before my dad's tone shifted. We're family, Ethan, he said. And family helps each other. We raised you, gave you a good education. A lot of what you have now, well, it comes from us, right? I didn't flinch, but I did straighten up a little in my seat. Then my mom jumped in, her voice soft, like she was stating something totally reasonable. If you could maybe help out with, say, $2,500 a month. Just some support. It's not a lot for someone like you. I looked at them, the two people who once told me I was a disgrace to the family, who kicked me out of a birthday celebration because I didn't match the image they wanted to present. Now here they were, sitting in my house, trying to attach a price tag to their apology. $2,000 a month, not because of need, but because, in their eyes, I owed them. Because my success was somehow a debt. I let out a small laugh. Not bitter, not mocking. Just the kind of laugh you give when you hear a story that makes no sense and somehow they expect you to nod along. I looked them in the eye. They were waiting, expecting me to agree. But I wasn't angry. I'd moved past that. I leaned back in the chair and spoke calmly, my voice steady. What about Lily? How much is she planning to contribute each month? Right then, the air in the room seemed to freeze. My dad looked over at my mom, quick, subtle. She answered slowly, carefully. Lily's job situation, it's still not stable. And with the breakup from Mason, she's been going through a lot lately. I nodded slightly. Wasn't surprised. Same excuses, different day, all wrapped in gentle words, but still just a way of shifting things around. I looked up again, met their eyes squarely, and said, if Lily agrees to support you with $2,500 a month, I said plainly, then I'll do the same. No more, no less. They didn't respond. Just sat there, staring at me like they were trying to figure out whether I was bluffing. I kept going, quiet but firm. Or, I added, if you want me to cover the whole amount myself, I'll need it in writing. A legal agreement stating that after you both pass, the house comes to me fully and without dispute. Then I stopped talking. No pressure. No further explanation. Just silence, the kind that forces people to sit with what's been said. I sat back in my chair and waited for once laying out the terms for something they'd always assumed was mine to handle, no questions asked. The room went still. Heavier than before. You could almost feel the air pressing in on itself. Then my father stood up suddenly. His hand slammed down on the table so hard, the teacup tipped and spilled down the wood. The shout that followed bounced off the walls. You're setting conditions for your parents? He yelled. We raised you for over 20 years and now you're nickel-and-diming us like this? His chest heaved with rage. What kind of life are you even living, huh? He was shouting so loud I wouldn't be surprised if the neighbors heard the whole thing. But I didn't flinch. Didn't rise to match his anger. I stayed in my seat, hands resting gently on the chair's arms, eyes steady. Not cold, just done. When he finally ran out of steam, I stood up slowly. My voice came out low and even, but it cut through the noise like glass. I think you both should leave my house. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was just a quiet request from someone who'd finally hit the edge of what respect could hold. Nobody said a word. The only sound after that was the soft drag of suitcase wheels against the hardwood and the front door clicking shut behind them, quieter than all the noise they'd left inside me. It's been 2 years since I saw them. Right there, in my own home. I never blocked their numbers. Didn't change my email. Didn't slam any doors shut. I just stopped reaching out. I waited to see if they'd still think of me as family even without obligation tying us together. But in 2 years, there's been nothing. No calls. No messages. Not a single how are you? Or happy birthday. I used to believe people could change. That family, especially, would come around. But what I've learned is not everyone does. Especially not the ones who never believed they were wrong to begin with. So I still live here. I work. I move through my days. But now I no longer let myself be an emotional ATM. No more pouring from an empty cup in the name of duty. And if there's one truth I've carried from all of this, it's this. Family isn't a place where people get to demand kindness and call it love. Real family, true family, is where you're valued as a person, not for what you can give. Not as a wallet. Not as a plan B. Not as the one they call when everyone else walks away. Before I close this chapter, I want to ask you something honestly. Was I wrong for not going back? For choosing not to give my parents $2,500 a month, even if they're older now and yes, they raised me? I used to think anything could be fixed if you tried hard enough. But after being made to feel like a stranger in my own life more times than I can count, I decided to stand up, to break the pattern.